Hey folks, it's Mitch Garvis. I'm here with Stephane Tartagila, and we're going to talk to you about choosing what cigar to smoke. Now, there are a lot of different types of cigars out there. And I'm not just talking about Habanos or Cuban cigars versus non-Cuban cigars, or puros versus mixed or blended cigars. I'm talking about just the different types of cigars that you may find. So, for example, we have here, this is a Partagas Maduro cigar from Havana or Habanos. This is an Alec Bradley Prensado, which is also a Maduro, but that's a Nicaraguan
cigar, yes.
And it's a beautiful cigar. And here is a Christoph Sumatra cigar. All three are very different, and if we look at the collection here, we have Ramon Alones, and we have El Rey del Mundo, and we have Joyo de Monterrey, and Diplomático. And I have friends who will say, you know, Mitch, I just want something cheap. Let me take one of your no-name cigars that we have there. So if you pull this tray off, we have here 5 cigars, 4 in the Cuban side and 1 in the non-Cuban side. Now, this no-name or unbranded cigar may look like the cheaper one, but it's actually the best cigar in my humidor because it's a custom roll. We'll talk about that throughout the time. Now, this particular custom roll is equivalent to a Cohiba Bejique, and it is rolled by Alejandro Glez, and we're going to interview him in a couple of months. I am really looking forward to going down to Havana and talking to Alejandro and recording in his shop. Man, is that going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be fun, yes.
In the meantime, what would you like to smoke right now?
If we're starting the evening, and
we're not. We've already had a couple of cigars.
But if we were starting the evening and I hadn't had a smoke yet, and I was planning on having more than one smoke in the evening, I would look at my selection and I would probably choose the milder of the cigars that I brought to start my evening with. Because you want to slowly pick up the pace as the night goes on. If you start with a very strong cigar, you're going to end up not enjoying the milder cigar later. Since we've already been smoking, I have chosen the Alec Bradley Prensado, which is a very strong cigar. It's a box press, Churchill, and actually smokes for a very long time. It's not for the faint of heart, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut this cigar. I'm going to show you my pre-light routine and eventually get to the point where we light it up and start smoking our cigar.
Wonderful. Now, I'm going to choose this Christoph Sumatra, which is also a hearty cigar. You'll notice that your cigar is naked and mine comes dressed in this cellophane wrapper. Do you know what the difference is?
Most non-Cuban cigars come in cellophane wrappers versus Cuban cigars. This one did have a cellophane wrapper on it and was removed for storage purposes. I'm curious to what you have to say.
My understanding is, like you say, most non-Cuban cigars do come in the cellophane, and there really is no difference. But there is debate. Now, I want to be very clear. There are a lot of ways of doing things. There's no right way and wrong way. There's a huge debate between cigar lovers whether you should take the cellophane wrapper off before you put it in your humidor, or if you should store it in your cellophane wrapper.
I've heard the same.
Now, is there a right or a wrong? Not really, but you will notice that if you have an aged cigar that's been in the cellophane for a long time, the cellophane will no longer be clear. It will actually have browning to it.
Yes.
You know what that does to the cigar?
What does that do to the
Absolutely nothing that I've ever been able to determine. It shows you that it's a little bit older.
Okay.
Now, you talked about your pre-cigar routine. I like to call it my rituals. Now, we have 2 very different cigars here.
Absolutely.
If you look, this is a
traditional cap.
A traditional cap. This is what they call a pigtail cap. There are a few different ways of opening them, and we will talk about the V-cut versus the straight cut versus the punch. And for your traditional cap, what would you prefer?
I would prefer a traditional straight cut for my cigar. So I will take
That is a very nice Ave Maria branded.
Ave Maria branded Calibri style straight cutter. I will take my cigar, I will hold it up, and I will bring my cutter down nice and straight to the top of the cigar, only removing maybe a millimeter, and then cut.
Now what's very important, if you look at the cap of the cigar, and let's just look at this one over here, it's hard to see it even in person, let alone on camera, but there is this top of the cigar is the cap, and however deep you go, you never want to cut through the cap. You don't want to cut below the cap. The cap really maintains the integrity of the cigar, or the build of the cigar.
Well, the cap is the part that's glued on.
That's right.
So if you go below the cap, you're going to unravel the leaf of the cigar.
Exactly. So you want to be very careful about that. Now, I usually prefer, rather than a straight cut, I usually prefer either a V cut or a punch. But we have a problem here. Here's my V cutter. And this is a Zycar VX2 V cutter, and it is, whoa, trying to escape. Here's the problem. The pigtail won't really go through all the way. Okay, we could force it, and I've seen people do 2 or 3 V cuts to get through to that. Now, if you prefer a punch, and what a punch does is it would literally punch a hole through the cap of the cigar so that you know you don't have to cut any bit of it off, and it maintains more of the cap. But if I try to do that, my punch isn't going to go over my cigar's pigtail either. So there are a couple of ways to do it. I could say I have to take a straight cut, and that's perfectly reasonable. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about their pigtails
I know.
is that if you take this
Yes.
and you just twist it off, now
You've essentially punched your cigar.
I have essentially, and if I were to take a draw, I will notice that I am able to draw. Now, if I was a stickler and I wanted to V-cut this further, this is now perfectly free to V-cut or punch.
Perfect.
But I think I'm going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to leave it like that. We're going to smoke it. Now, I'm going to put this away for now. There are several different ways to light a cigar.
Well, before we light,
Yeah?
I cut my cigar, but I did not test my draw.
Oh, that's important, because you saw me test my draw, and I should have spoken about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I took a very small cut off the top, because again, I did not want to go through the cap. I'm going to test my draw. And my draw is perfect, so I do not need it. Let's say my draw was a little tight. I could always cut a little bit more off, or I could switch to the V cut, take a V cut, and check my draw again. You have a couple of options when it comes to that, and if you're still tight, there are more options after the fact that we can talk about a little bit
And
later.
we'll talk about perfect draws in a future video.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, one more thing before I light my cigar, I like to do my pre-light taste. Cold draw, where you take your cigar and you bring it in your mouth, blow it out through your nose, and there are flavors present before you light your cigar. You can take it and you can smell the foot. See what kind of flavors you get. Sometimes you'll get earthy, sometimes you'll get grassy, occasionally you'll get dark chocolate.
I was smoking an acid cigar yesterday that literally had the most floral flavor that I ever tasted. It was like smoking potpourri.
Lovely.
As you know, that was not my favorite cigar, but it was different. Like you say, different hints, different notes, different flavors.
Absolutely. I think we're ready to light our cigars.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
We do a lot of things with bands. There is a lot of discussion amongst cigar aficionados, and especially the people who think they know. Everyone has an opinion of when to take your band off.
I was thinking the same thing.
Now, the one thing I will say is there are people who say you leave the band on, and when the flame is about to get to the band, you put out your cigar. That's nearly 2 inches of cigar that you've wasted.
You've still got smoke left.
You have a lot. On yours, it's 3.5 inches. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of cigar left.
Now, my opinion on the band is you smoke until you're within a centimeter of the band, And then you remove your band, whether you're able to slide it off or unpeel the band and take it off. And then you continue smoking your cigar until either the flavor goes sour or it gets hot on the fingers or hot on the mouth. And then you put your cigar out. And there is a proper way to lay a cigar to rest as well.
Absolutely. But while we're on the topic of bands, if you notice right now, this Christophe Sumatra band isn't going anywhere. This is tight on the cigar.
Yeah.
Reason being, it is essentially glued to the cigar. If I were to force it off now, I could ruin the cigar.
You could take some of the leaf with it.
I probably could, and that's really going to break the integrity, and that's going to ruin my smoke.
Yeah.
But as you smoke the cigar, remember, you're bringing the heat from the fire up, and it loosens the glue. So by the time we're ready to take it off, we're either able to loosen it enough and pull it off, and sometimes you're going to want to actually peel it off because you feel that it's not going to come off cleanly. But either way, some people save the bands, some people have collections of bands, some people make brilliant artwork with bands and pens and all sorts of great material.
Absolutely.
Stephane Tartagila, Tartaglia's Turnings, made me the most impeccable Cohiba Maduro 5 pen that you're ever going to see. We'll talk about that in another episode. So we can do that, or we can throw it out.
There's no rule on what you have to do with your band.
Exactly. Except if you're with somebody who makes cigar pens, don't just crumple it up and throw it in the garbage because they're going to say, that was a pen that I could have made.
Very possibly.
All right. So how about we end this video here, and in the next video we're going to come back and talk to people about lighting the cigar and different ways and different tools and different rituals for actually lighting.
Sounds like a plan, because I'm ready to light my cigar.
Stephane Tartagila, I'm Mitch Garvis. Thank you very much for watching.